Up everybody, that guy.
Yeah, he's that guy. And welcome back to Baldycats. Now, let's see why that guy is a little bit annoyed.
99% of my comments, or the comments on my videos, are trolls.
Yeah, he doesn't like getting comments from trolls. He finds it very discouraging.
It's very discouraging.
Told you.
I just need a little more help from the people that are getting it, that are understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah, so he seems really genuinely upset and he wants help from other flat earthers because lots of people are criticising his content and he doesn't like negative comments. Which is why I found it amazingly ironic that the first time I come into contact with this guy, he sent me this message where he calls me a fucking tool amongst loads of other messages with a similar tone. And then this one where he tells me he's made essentially a science-breaking video that I will never ever ever be able to debunk, and I am essentially running away from him scared. He also asked to debate me, but I think you'll see at the end of this video that wouldn't be worth any of our time. So let's begin.
We're talking about the vacuum of space and our atmosphere and testing the theory that gravity is what's holding the air and water and everything to Earth.
So I guess we all know where this is going, but crucially, he actually starts off by telling us something that's correct.
So let's take a quick look at the theory real quick. We have water down here. We have thick atmosphere. It thins out as you go up. This is mid-atmosphere, upper atmosphere, lower Earth orbit, and then deep space.
But then he immediately follows that up with something that's not quite as good.
That means closest to Earth, you'll have the most gravitational pull. The further away you go, the less gravity, until eventually you leave Earth and then there's no gravity acting upon you.
Right, first of all, if you're going to start sending me smarmy messages telling me that I'm a fool and you have some kind of undebunkable experiment that we're about to see which completely destroys the idea of gravity, then maybe, just maybe, it would have been a really, really, really good idea if you learnt just a little bit about gravity, maybe. So let's start here. Gravitational force acting per kilogram is calculated by this. This is a gravitational constant, mass of the Earth, and that is a distance to the object from the centre of the Earth. And this is where a lot of flat earthers fall down, because you imagine that gravity is measured from the surface of the Earth, and it's not. It's the centre of the Earth. Now, the radius of the Earth is 6,357 kilometres-ish. Okay? Space, or the Kármán line, is about 100 kilometres up. Now, if we plug all of these numbers in, then the force that we get on the surface of the Earth is about 9.8 newtons per kilogram, which is the 9.8 metres per second squared that we see as an acceleration. If we look at the Kármán line, where you're claiming gravity is so extremely weak that it's almost non-existent, if we plug those numbers in there with the extra 100 kilometres, then what we actually get is just short of 9.6 newtons per kilogram. So that's about a 2% decrease in gravity. Let's move on.
So these molecules up here have the least amount of gravity acting on them, and they're the closest to the vacuum.
Yeah, so the gas particles at the edge of space are closest to the vacuum of space, but the gravitational attraction, like we've just seen, is almost the same as it is on the surface of the Earth. This is poor. Let's see where you go now.
The air rushing inside a vacuum has nothing to do with the pressure of the air down here at sea level. Neil deGrasse Tyson and the other preachers will love to tell you that it's the air pressure forcing itself inside the vacuum. No, that's, if I open this jar right now, that's the air forcing itself inside the bottle. When it's just sitting here open, the air will fill the bottle. That's common sense.
Yeah, and why does it enter the bottle? It enters the bottle because the net force pushing the air in is bigger than the net force keeping the air out. Why don't you tell us what a vacuum is? Because this is great.
But when you create a vacuum, and I put my finger over here, that's a vacuum inside there. It's a very, very weak vacuum.
No, that is not a vacuum at all. First of all, you send me a message telling me I'm a fool. Secondly, you tell me you have an experiment that I can't debunk. But it turns out you've done no research behind even the most basic maths behind gravity, and now you don't know what a vacuum is. There is still air inside that bottle. It is not a vacuum. All you've done is squeeze a little bit of air out. That's it.
This is two different pressure systems. Right now I've created a vacuum inside. It's not equal to the air outside here anymore. It's different. It's a different pressure system inside this bottle than the one surrounding it here. That's why when I let my finger go, it will equalize every single time.
Yeah, and in that instance, we know that the air is going to go into the bottle because you've already pre-emptied some of the air from the bottle, so there's now a bigger net force pushing the air in than keeping the air out. But it is really interesting that you say that every single time the pressures will equalize. Because earlier on you said this.
We have thick atmosphere. It thins out as you go up.
And it's amazing, isn't it, how the same person who stood here telling us that pressure must always equalize is simultaneously ignoring the fact that he's just told us our atmosphere has a pressure gradient that doesn't equalize. And it's such an easy thing for these gravity deniers to do, to claim that the atmosphere is like a pressurized system, like a tire, or or something like that, because then they can claim that the air must be blown off into space. But they will never, ever, ever, ever acknowledge the pressure gradient that exists. But we know that. Anyway, let's look at his take on thermodynamics.
That's the second law of thermodynamics in basic explanation.
All right, okay. It seems that was his understanding of the second law of thermodynamics, that simply gas must rush off into space. Brilliant, well done. Now, the second law of thermodynamics is really about energy and entropy. And as we know, the energy of the gas particles that high up in the atmosphere is extremely low. They've already lost so much energy by radiating it as heat off into space, and by doing work against gravity to reach the altitude that they've reached. And it is amazing that somebody so confrontational and confident in their own ideas doesn't feel that they need to research even the basics of gravity, the basics of what a vacuum is, or the basic definition of what the second law of thermodynamics is, because he can just make it up, that's fine, and then come up with a ridiculous experiment like this.
So we'll have to stick it in water. I'll let it go. I'm not helping this in any way. I just set it in the water after I squeezed it, created the vacuum, stuck it inside the water. And it's slowly drawing water inside of it.
But you see, the vacuum isn't drawing the water inside it. The water is being pushed on by the air above it, which is forcing it into the bottle. And I can prove it with this. Well, it's an experiment I do with 11-year-old children. Here we go.
Seal the hole such that no air leaks into the bottle from the sides. Now that we have left no room for any air to enter into the bottle from the outside, try sucking out water through the straw. You will observe that a little water comes to the mouth and then it stops. Can you explain why?
You see, this is something that every single person watching this video can try, including yourself, but I'm pretty sure that you'll not try it and you'll not get back to it, because it absolutely blows your entire argument out the window like that. And all you have to do is have the intelligence of an 11-year-old child like the ones I teach. Anyway, if you've got another point, can you make it?
The point being... sorry.
I'm sorry, that wasn't very clear. Can you go again?
The point the demonstration is making is this tiny little vacuum here that I'm creating with a cheap little plastic bottle. This little vacuum here is nothing compared, I mean nothing compared to this. We can't even create a vacuum strong enough on Earth to replicate deep space.
Yeah, you're right, we can't replicate the vacuum of space on Earth, but what you've got to remember is the difference in pressure between the vacuum of space and the surface of Earth is only 1 atmosphere, which is actually a lot less than inside a car tyre and outside a car tyre. So it's not the huge, gigantic difference that you keep trying to imply it is. Also, secondly, we've just proved that vacuums don't suck. We've just proved with that simple child's experiment that it's air pushing down that forces the water up through the straw. So your squidgy bottle water experiment, I'm not really sure how it's relevant anymore.
It's very discouraging.
Okay, that guy, let's just summarize what's happened here before we end. You came over to my channel posting insulting messages like I was a fucking fool. You told me that you had an experiment that nobody could debunk at all. In fact, you said this.
If you believe in the globe, you have to explain this with science. So I'd love to hear back from like a physics professor or something on something like this. I've never heard a professional or a physics professor or anybody like explain this with science.
But then when I watch your video, it becomes increasingly clear that you totally misunderstand literally everything about the science behind the heliocentric model. And when you misunderstand and misrepresent so badly, then of course you're going to think it's false. You seem to think for some unknown reason that at the edge of space, that gravity is so extremely weak that it can't hold on to any atmosphere whatsoever, when in reality, as we've shown at the Kármán line, it's about 2% less, give or take a little bit. You seem to think that a vacuum is, for some reason, a little bit of air squeezed out of a bottle. You seem to think that the second law of thermodynamics is about the movement of matter and not about the movement of energy. But worst of all, to destroy your undebunkable experiment, as you called it, to destroy that, all I had to do was show you a little simple demonstration I do in the classroom with 11-year-old children. And now I'm challenging you to do that demonstration. I'm challenging you to put that straw in a jar, to seal that container properly and see if you can drink the water. And you will find that as soon as you open the lid, you can. And that is because the air is pressing down, the vacuum isn't sucking, you were wrong, you called me a fucking fool, but you've just been schooled. See you, pal.